If you found a cop bleeding in the snow, would you call 911 without thinking? Or would you hesitate if she whispered, "They're the ones"? Who shot me? Christopher Knox had spent 40 years trying to forget war, but that one question dragged every old instinct back as he knelt beside the dying officer and her loyal K9, staring at a badge soaked in its own blood. Grab your coffee and stay with me, because what happened next turned a lonely cabin in the snow into the kind of truth the FBI never saw coming. Christopher stood on his porch with a mug of coffee in his hand, staring at the tree line while the sound rolled over him again. That sharp, desperate barking, cutting through the wind in a way that made his gut tighten. A sound he hadn't heard in years but knew way too well from bad nights long ago. "Damn it," he muttered. Titan barked again, 3 quick bursts, then a high, broken whine that made the hair rise on Christopher's arms. He hadn't heard that exact sound in years, but his body knew it before his head did. It was the kind of noise patrol dogs made when someone stopped moving. He set the mug down on the rail and moved without thinking. Coat from the hook, gloves, old flashlight, the pistol from the locked box under the kitchen sink. His hands were clumsy with age at first. Then they remembered what to do and went fast, sure, automatic. Outside, the snow was knee-deep and still coming down, a steady white curtain. Hi, my amazing friends and family. Welcome back to Vigilant Heart Tales. Before we jump deep into today's story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing all your names and countries. And don't forget to check out the other stories on the channel. Tomorrow I've got another crazy one coming that I know you'll enjoy. Alright, let's get into it. The stars were gone, swallowed by low clouds. The world was just black trees and white ground and the thin voices of the wind. And that barking, out there past his property line. He trudged off the porch and into the drifts, boots squeaking, knees complaining. The cold grabbed his lungs on the first breath and reminded him that he wasn't 20 anymore. He kept going anyway, following the sound. "Hold on, whoever you are," he said to nobody. "Hold on, dog." The forest swallowed his cabin behind him. Up close the trees looked like thick, dark pillars, spaced just wide enough for shadows to hide between them. He moved in a slow, careful line, scanning as he walked. Old habits. Watch the ground for tracks. Count breaths. Mark cover. The barking got louder, more frantic. There was a little yelp, sharp and scared, that pushed him to move faster. He saw the shape before his mind wanted to name it. At first it looked like a spill of dark cloth on the snow. Then the flashlight beam caught the glint of something, metal, round, familiar. He stepped closer, and the beam slid over a badge lying half-buried in white powder. His heart dropped. Badge. Uniform. Boots. Blood. Hell, he whispered. The cop was face up, snow caught in her lashes. Blood spread like paint under her. Her vest sat crooked on her chest. The wound was high, right where the armor ended. Someone had known what they were doing. The dog, big German shepherd, thick winter coat, was pacing in tight circles around her head. When Christopher stepped in, the dog swung toward him with a deep growl. "Easy," Christopher said, raising one hand, flashlight low. His voice came out calm, even though he felt anything but easy, boy. The dog's ears flicked at his tone. He sniffed the air once, then backed off half a step, still tense, eyes never leaving Christopher's face. Christopher dropped to his knees in the snow. The cold soaked through his jeans in seconds, but he barely felt it. Up close, the woman looked young. Late 20s maybe. Dark hair pulled back under her cap. Blood on her lips. He set the flashlight down, braced her jaw, checked her airway. Her breath came thin and wet and rattling. "Officer," he said, leaning close. "You hear me?" Her eyelids twitched. He tore open her jacket. found the wound with his fingers. Hot, slick, pumping slow. He pressed his palms over it, hard, and she jolted like he'd hit her. "You're not dying out here," he said. "Not tonight." Titan whined, low in his throat, and nudged at her arm with his nose. "Hey," Christopher said to the dog without looking up. "You stay with us. You hear? You don't quit. We don't quit." He reached for the radio clipped to her shoulder. The thing was cracked. Maybe it had hit a rock when she fell. He grabbed his own handheld from his pocket, thumb already searching for the emergency channel. That's when her hand shot up. Her fingers caught his wrist in a grip that surprised him with its strength. He looked down. Her eyes were open now, glassy but focused, staring straight into his. "Don't," she breathed. He frowned. "We need an ambulance." "Don't call the police," she rasped. It came out broken, but clear enough. "They're the ones who shot me." The wind seemed to stop for a second. Only the dog's rough breathing and her wet rasp filled the space between the trees. "You sure you're not confused?" he asked. Stupid question. He knew it as soon as it left his mouth. But the whole world had just tilted sideways, and he needed one more second. Her grip tightened, nails digging into his glove. "He shot me," she whispered. "Chief Harrigan left me here." Titan whined again. Not random. It sounded like an answer. Christopher stared at her. The normal thing, the right thing, his whole life's training, said you call for help when a cop goes down. You don't question the system. You don't play doctor. You don't drag bodies around in the snow. But she wasn't looking at him like a stranger begging for a favor. She was looking at him like a soldier who knew exactly where the friendly fire had come from. He remembered a different jungle, different uniforms, men he'd trusted making decisions that got kids killed, things that never made it into reports. The dog nudged her again, and this time she turned her face toward the sound, her mouth twitching. "You trust him?" Christopher asked softly, nodding at the dog. It was a stupid thing to say, but it fell out anyway. Her eyes flicked to Titan, then back to him. Barely a nod, but there it was. "Then I'll trust you," he said. He put the radio away. He worked faster. First, he tore a strip from her shirt and pushed it hard over the hole in her chest, packing it, trying to slow the leak. Then he pulled a flat plastic packet from his coat. A chest seal he kept more out of stubborn habit than belief he'd ever use it. He slapped it over the wound, smoothed it down. "Stay with me," he said as he worked. "What's your name, officer?" She swallowed. "Regina Shaw." It came out in a small gasp. "All right, Shaw. I'm Christopher. We're going to my place. You picked a lousy night to get shot, but we'll make do." He hooked one arm under her shoulders, the other under her knees, grunting as he lifted. She wasn't heavy, but he wasn't young. His back protested. He ignored it. Titan pressed close on his left, pacing with him as he turned toward his cabin. Snow slapped his face, stung his cheeks. The flashlight beam bobbed over the ground, catching flashes of deep drifts and roots and broken branches. Every step was a battle. Regina's breath hitched against his chest, warm through his coat. Sometimes it paused a little too long before starting again. Each time that happened, he talked to her, low and steady. "Shaw, you still with me?" "Yeah," she whispered once. "Wish I wasn't." "You and me both," he said. "But we're here, so tough luck." They broke through the last trees, and his cabin appeared out of the dark, small, square, lights glowing yellow from the windows. Smoke rose from the chimney in a thin line. It looked like safety, but his gut had already started to tell him that tonight it was going to be anything but. He kicked the door open with his heel and carried her inside. The warmth hit like a wall, with stove humming, air smelling of pine, coffee, and old books. He laid her gently on the couch, then moved fast. Jacket off, vest unbuckled. He cut away fabric around the wound, checking the seal. Blood had leaked around the edge. He pressed down again, harder. Regina groaned. "I've had better dates," she muttered. It caught him off guard. He huffed out a short laugh. "You cops always this charming when you're bleeding on strangers' furniture? Only on the good days." Titan trotted in circles, nails clicking on the wood floor, whining. He finally planted himself at her side, head on the edge of the couch, eyes wide and fixed on her face. Christopher grabbed a stack of clean towels, extra blankets, and his old first aid kit. He wrapped one towel under her back, another across her chest, then tucked blankets tight around her to keep her warm. Her skin was icy under his hands. Her lips had gone pale. "You a doctor too?" she asked, voice thin. "Combat medic's worst nightmare," he said. "Guy who had to listen to them. Lift your head a little." He slid a folded blanket under her shoulder to elevate her chest. Checked her pupils. Still reactive. Good sign. Maybe. His mind kept wanting to snag on what she'd said out there. "Chief Harrigan, the police shot me. Don't call them." He forced himself to stay in the moment. Airway. Breathing. Circulation. Everything else later. When he'd done what he could, he sat back on the coffee table, breathing hard, studying her. She watched him through half-lidded eyes. "Why'd he shoot you?" Christopher asked quietly. Regina licked dry lips. Her hand fumbled for his wrist again. Less strong now, more like a child reaching in the dark. "You got water?" she asked. He got up, poured her a glass, held it while she took small sips. Titan watched every movement, muscles twitching. She drew in a shaky breath. "You ever heard of WITSEC?" she asked. "Witness protection," he said. "Yeah. Had a buddy disappear into that, after the war." "Why?" She stared at the ceiling. "It's not as safe as they think it is," she said. "Not if someone's selling the addresses." The room felt smaller suddenly. The crackle of the fire sounded too loud. "Start from the top," he said. "Slow. We've got time until we don't." She let out a rough laugh that turned into a cough. "I work K9 for Pine Ridge PD small town. Good place. At least I thought so." She told it in pieces, voice breaking, drifting, coming back. He had to keep nudging her with questions to keep her tethered. A few months back, she'd been working a case tied to cartel traffickers passing through the region. Nothing huge on paper. Small seizures, 1 or 2 bodies. But she noticed something strange. The names of some overdoses and robberies gone wrong lined up with older federal witness lists she'd seen in training. People who should have vanished into new lives were showing up as corpses under their original names. "Too many to be coincidence," she whispered. "Too neat." She started digging, quietly at first. Checked old logs. Ran names through databases she technically wasn't supposed to access. The same pattern showed up in other states, other towns. Families in witness protection dying in accidents, home invasions, gas leaks. All with a faint paper trail pointing back to data from law enforcement systems. "So, I keep looking," she said. "I find this ledger, hidden in a backup drive. Names, new IDs, locations, sale prices. Someone inside was selling the lists." Her eyes slid toward him. He saw fury in them, buried under the pain. "You know who had access to that system, old man." "Let me guess," he said. "Your chief." "Chief Harrigan," she said. "Town hero. Smiles for cameras. Loves parades." Her voice turned bitter. "Sells families to cartels on the side." She confronted him. She didn't give every detail now, but he got enough. An argument in his office. Him playing dumb at first, then turning cold when she showed she had proof. He told her to take a ride with him that night, said they'd sort it out, make calls, maybe even go straight to the state police together. Instead, he drove her up into the mountains under the excuse of checking an informant. Titan in the back. Halfway up an old logging road, he stopped the car, stepped out, and told her to check something near the trilene. He shot me when I was walking away from him, she said. Didn't even say anything. Just boom. She remembered the impact, the spin, the snow coming up to meet her, Titan going wild, trying to get out of the car, Harrigan standing over her for a second, gun in hand, breathing hard. Then, "You shouldn't have looked," in a flat voice. He walked back to the car, slammed the door, and drove off, leaving her there with the dog rampaging in the back seat. Titan, smart and trained and bonded, broke through the barrier and found her. He stayed, barked, howled, refused to leave. "Only reason I'm not dead already is him," she said, sliding her shaky hand toward the dog's ear. Titan pressed closer to her, tongue flicking across her fingers. Christopher sat back, rubbing his beard. He felt the old anger rising, the one he'd kept buried under solitude and chopping wood, and pretending life was simple now. "Why not call the FBI yourself?" he asked. She let out a breath that might have been a laugh. "You think I didn't," she murmured. "I've been feeding stuff to a contact for months. Tonight, before the ride, I sent them the big one, the decrypted ledger. Names, dates, wiring info. Whole thing." "Good," he said. Her eyes rolled back for a second, then refocused. There was a backup, panic button, dead man's switch. If I didn't cancel the upload by midnight, it would send another copy. I didn't cancel, so they got it. At least I hope they did. "You're saying the feds know already?" Christopher asked. "Maybe, but they don't know what he just did to me." Her fingers tightened on the blanket. "And Harrigan doesn't know what they know. Not yet. He'll assume his problem is local. He'll try to clean the scene first." Her gaze moved past him to the window. Outside, the trees loomed dark against the snow. "He'll come back to make sure I'm dead," she whispered. "And if he sees your lights..." She didn't need to finish. Christopher stood, walked to the front window, and pulled the curtain aside a bit. Endless black, snowflakes swirling in the glow from his porch light. His cabin had always felt like a bunker, a place where the outside world couldn't reach him. Tonight, it felt like a target. "You own any weapons?" Regina asked from the couch. He looked back at her. "You asking as a cop, or a person who doesn't want to be murdered?" "Person," she said. "The cop part's on break." "I've got enough," he said. "Question is what I'm willing to use." He checked the time. Past midnight. Mountain road slick. If Harrigan realized she might have survived, how long would it take him to move? Small town, smaller department. He wouldn't bring everyone. Just enough. Titan lifted his head, ears pricking. A low growl rolled out of his chest. "What is it?" Christopher asked. The dog kept staring at the door, body rigid. Christopher killed the lamps without thinking. The room dropped into soft dark, lit only by the glow from the wood stove. He moved to a back shelf, pulled down a metal box and opened it. Inside lay a few old tools he'd sworn he wouldn't touch again. Tripwire spools, homemade flash charges, nails, odds and ends from a much younger life. He thought he'd made those traps to scare off bears. That was partly true. The rest of the truth was that some part of him never stopped expecting a fight. He grabbed what he needed. "Can you move at all?" he asked Regina. "Define move," she said weakly. "Sit up, roll, crawl." "Maybe," she said, "if the world stops spinning." "All right," he said. "We're going to play the world's worst game of hide and seek." He dragged the rug aside and pried up 2 floorboards with a crowbar. Beneath was a shallow, dirt-floored crawlspace he hadn't used in years. He went back to the couch, slid one arm under Regina's shoulders, and one under her knees again. "This'll hurt," he warned. "Already hurts," she whispered. "Just don't drop me on my head. I kind of like my brain." He lowered her carefully into the dark space, laid blankets under and over her, and tucked her radio, phone, and sidearm beside her. Titan stood at the edge, looking down with obvious distress. "You too!" Christopher told the dog. "Get in with her." Titan didn't move. Christopher met his eyes. "Listen, soldier. You want to protect her? Then you stay quiet and out of sight until I say otherwise. Understood?" He didn't know if the dog understood the words, but he heard something in the tone. Titan huffed once, then stepped down into the crawl space and curled protectively beside Regina, his head close to the boards. Christopher lowered the planks back into place, hammered them down quickly, but not too loud, then rolled the rug over them. By the time he slid the crowbar back under the stove, Titan was silent. The only sounds were the fire, the ticking of the old clock, and the faint, distant rumble of an engine out on the mountain road. Christopher went to the window and saw a thin beam of headlights weaving between the trees far below. The lights rose slowly, following the road up toward his property. He took a deep breath. His hands shook just a little. He clenched his fingers into fists until it stopped. "All right, Harrigan," he said under his breath. "Come knock." He put away the pistol. He didn't hide it far, just inside a kitchen drawer, but he wanted his hands empty when the door opened. An old man with a gun is a threat. An old man with nothing but a bad attitude is a nuisance. Sometimes a nuisance lives longer. The engine grew louder, then cut. Tires crunched over snow outside. A car door slammed. Another. Boots. Someone pounded on the door, hard enough to rattle the frame. "Mr. Knox!" A man's voice called. Too cheerful, too bright. "This is Chief Harrigan with Pine Ridge Police. We need to speak with you." Christopher let himself count to 3, then 5, then 10. He wanted them to feel the weight. Then he shuffled to the door, made sure his shoulders sagged and his face looked puzzled, and opened it. The night spilled in. So did Harrigan. He was big, broad-shouldered, mid-50s with silver at his temples, his uniform neat even in the storm. Snow dusted his cap and mustache. His smile looked friendly. His eyes did not. "Evening, sir," Harrigan said. "Sorry to bother you so late. Mind if we come in out of this cold?" Behind him stood 2 deputies, one tall and skinny with nervous eyes, the other shorter, solid, scanning everything. Their breath rose in small clouds as they waited. Christopher squinted into the light from the cruiser. He made his voice rougher than it had to be. "You got a warrant?" he asked. Harrigan chuckled like they were sharing a joke. "Nothing like that," he said. "We're just out on a welfare check. One of our officers is missing. Her GPS pinged not far from here earlier tonight. Thought we'd check with the nearest neighbor." "I don't get many neighbors," Christopher said. "That's why we're asking you," Harrigan said. "Mind if we step inside?" Christopher hesitated, but only for show. If he refused flat, they'd push. Better to let the wolf think he's invited. He opened the door wider. "Wipe your boots," he said. "Floor's old." Harrigan smiled and stepped in, shaking snow off his shoulders. The deputies followed, stomping their boots and brushing off their coats. Inside, the cabin felt smaller with them there. Harrigan looked around with a practiced eye, taking in the stove, the couch, the shelves. His gaze lingered on Christopher's, face a beat too long. "You live out here alone, Mr. Knox?" he asked. "Been that way a while," Christopher said. "What's this about a missing officer?" Harrigan sighed, playing the worried leader. "Officer Regina Shaw," he said. "K9 unit. Good cop. Didn't report in from a call. Her last known location was a few miles from here. We saw some tracks heading this way. Thought maybe she stopped by." Christopher shook his head. "Haven't seen any cops. Just me and the trees." Harrigan's eyes flicked to the floor near the door. Christopher followed his gaze with his own and saw, with a hard twist of regret, a small smear of blood he'd missed. It was faint, nearly brown already, but it was there. The shorter deputy saw it too. Christopher could see now, she was a woman, Morales from her name tag, tensed slightly. "You hurt yourself, sir?" she asked, nodding at the floor. Chopped some wood earlier, Christopher said. Got careless. Old man hands. You know how it is. Harrigan stepped further in, his boots creaking. You mind if we take a quick look around? He asked. His tone was still polite. Underneath there was iron. Christopher shrugged. Cabin's not that big, he said. Knock yourselves out. Just don't break anything. That couch is older than you are. Harrigan chuckled again. The deputies split off. Morales moved toward the back hallway, checking doors. The nervous one, Cole, peered into the small kitchen. Under the floor, inches from Harrigan's boots, Titan lay with his head against the boards, every muscle coiled. Regina's breath came shallow beside him. She could hear muffled footsteps, low voices, the slide of leather and fabric. Christopher stayed between Harrigan and the rug as much as he could without drawing attention. Harrigan's eyes kept drifting there anyway. You a veteran, Mr. Knox? Harrigan asked, nodding at a faded unit patch hanging on the wall. Long time ago, Christopher said. Vietnam. Harrigan guessed. Yeah. My uncle served, Harrigan said. Said people like you saved his rear more than once. Your uncle had a colorful way of talking, Christopher said. Harrigan smiled, but his eyes slid past Christopher again to the floor, to Regina under it, to Titan. You sure you haven't seen Officer Shaw tonight? Harrigan asked. His voice had lost the soft edges now. Her car was found up the road. We know she didn't just vanish. Christopher met his gaze. I saw a lot of things in the dark over there, he said, gesturing vaguely toward the window. Trees. Snow. My own breath. No cops. For a second, Harrigan's jaw tightened. From outside, the wind gusted. The cabin creaked, and from beneath the floor, very faint, but not faint enough, came a low, warning growl. Titan couldn't help it. Harrigan's scent, the footsteps, the voice that had stood over Regina with a gun. It all crashed together in his head and came out of his throat before he could stop it. Cole froze. Morales turned her head. Harrigan went still. They all looked at the same spot at once. At Christopher. At the rug. Harrigan's smile died. You keep pets, Mr. Knox? He asked softly. Christopher held his ground. Had a cat once, he said. She left. Said I was too grumpy. Harrigan's hand went to his holster. The night in the cabin took a sharp, hard turn. And that was the moment the old man realized that the war he'd left 40 years ago had just walked straight through his front door wearing a badge. Harrigan's gun came out in one smooth motion. He didn't shout a warning. He didn't play by any rule Christopher recognized from the world cops were supposed to live in. The chief just drew and stepped forward, the muzzle aimed center mass at the old man's chest. On your knees, Harrigan snapped. Hands on your head. The friendly mask was gone. In its place was something flat and mean. Christopher raised his hands slowly, but didn't kneel. His knees might not have gotten him up again. More than that, bowing to this man felt wrong in his bones. It's late, he said. My floor's cold. How about we all calm down? Drop the act, Harrigan snapped. There's a dog under that floor, and my officer's missing. You really want to be the guy lying to police in the middle of a homicide investigation? Thought she was just missing, Christopher said. For half a heartbeat, Harrigan's eyes flickered. Gotcha, Christopher thought. Cole shifted nervously by the window, hand on his own gun. Morales stood in the hallway with her weapon, still holstered but her jaw tight. You've got 3 seconds, Harrigan said. 1. 2. Christopher moved. He didn't go for the gun. He knew he'd lose that race. He twisted sideways and let himself fall, hard, into Harrigan's shins. The chief wasn't expecting an old man to tackle him. His feet went out from under him, and they crashed into the coffee table. The lamp toppled. The shade flew. Light and shadows swung wild. The gun went off. The shot slammed into the ceiling, spraying dust and bits of plaster. Morales yelled something. Cole cursed. Under the floor, Regina flinched, hand flying to her chest as if the sound alone could tear her open. Titan jolted, claws digging into the ground, another growl rising. Christopher and Harrigan wrestled on the floor. Harrigan was stronger, but Christopher fought dirty. He jammed an elbow into Harrigan's throat, a knee toward his groin, fingers clawing for the gun. Gun! Cole shouted. Don't shoot, you idiot! Harrigan choked, trying to keep control of both the weapon and the story. Morales rushed in, but she hesitated, not sure where to grab. The gun skidded across the floor, bounced off the rug, and clattered to a stop by the stove. Christopher used the second of surprise to crawl toward it. Harrigan grabbed his boot and yanked him back. Pain shot through Christopher's knee. He grunted, twisted, and kicked hard at Harrigan's bandaged arm. Harrigan yelped, letting go. Christopher reached the gun, closed his hand around it, rolled, and pointed it at Harrigan's chest. "Everybody freeze," he gasped. For once, they listened. Cole froze near the window, gun half drawn. Morales stopped in the doorway. Harrigan knelt on the floor, breathing hard, face flushed with anger. "You just assaulted an officer," Harrigan said. "You think you can point that thing at me and walk away?" Christopher's hands were steady now. The years fell off him in the way he held the gun, the way his eyes narrowed. "I think," he said quietly, "that whatever story walks away from this is going to look a lot worse for you than for me." Harrigan's gaze flicked to the rug again, then back to Christopher. His eyes changed, not less angry, colder. "Shaw is under there, isn't she?" he said. Not a question. Christopher didn't answer. Harrigan chuckled, a humorless little sound. "You're in over your head, old man. You have no idea what you just stepped into." From outside, the wind howled. The cabin creaked again, and then another sound cut through it all. The muffled crunch of boots in the snow, more of them, coming fast. Harrigan lifted his voice. "Officers, shots fired inside. Knox has my weapon. Proceed as hostile." Cole flinched. "Chief, that's an order." Harrigan barked. The next second, gunfire exploded from outside. Bullets tore through the front window, showering glass. Christopher dove behind the couch, dragging the coffee table with him for cover. He kept the pistol trained on Harrigan with one hand and grabbed the edge of the rug with the other. "Shaw!" he shouted toward the floor. "We're moving." Her voice came back weak but clear. "Wish you'd picked a better time to tell me." He flipped the rug aside and pried up the boards fast. Gun still pointed, eyes jumping between Harrigan and the door. Glass rained down. Bits of wall flew as more rounds punched through. Harrigan crawled toward the kitchen, shouting at the deputies outside. "He's holding Regina. Do not let them out." Crooked bastard, Christopher thought. Even now, he's writing his report. He got the boards open. Titan burst up first, teeth bared, for bristling. "Guard the rear," Christopher snapped. The dog didn't need training for that. He planted himself between Harrigan and the crawlspace, snarling, hackles raised. Christopher slid himself halfway into the hole and hooked Regina under the arms. She cried out as he pulled her up, but she didn't fight him. "You sure this is better than bleeding quietly under the floor?" she gasped. "Ask me again in 5 minutes," he said. He hauled her onto the couch, then onto his shoulder again. His back screamed. His legs shook. He locked them anyway and pushed to his feet. Another spray of bullets hit the far wall, close enough to send with splinters into his cheek. "We head out the front and we die," Regina hissed. "You got a back door?" "Always," he said. He backed toward the narrow hallway, keeping Harrigan in his sights, Regina's weight dragging at him. Titan moved sideways with them, body between Harrigan and his handler. "Shoot him!" Harrigan shouted at Morales. Morales had her gun out now, but she held it low. Her eyes flicked from Christopher to the bleeding bandage on Harrigan's arm, then to Titan's bared teeth. "Chief, with all due respect," she said in a tight voice, "this is a mess. You think it gets cleaner if he walks out that back door?" Harrigan snarled. "He's a threat. She's compromised. You want the cartel knocking on your parents' door next? Take the shot." Morales' jaw clenched. For a long second, the whole room hung on what she'd do. Then she lowered the gun. "No clear line," she said. "Too much crossfire." Harrigan cursed. "Cole," he yelled. But Cole was outside, firing blindly at the cabin, convinced he was in a full-on war. Christopher didn't wait for the next debate. He pivoted into the hallway, Titan backing with him. He reached the back door, kicked it open, and stepped out into a blast of cold. Snow and wind hit him full in the face. The night behind the cabin was darker. Trees pressed closer. He could hear the other officers moving around the side, but couldn't see them yet. "Tit," Regina started, then coughed blood. "I know," Christopher said. "Stick by me." He moved in a crouch, lifting his feet high so he wouldn't trip with her weight on him. Titan trotted ahead a few feet, turning his head constantly, ears flicking. Behind them, inside the cabin, Harrigan cursed again and stormed toward the back, blood dripping from his arm onto the floor. "Back in trance," he shouted. "They're heading for the truck." Christopher's truck sat under a half-buried lean-to, old but solid, his emergency ride. Snow drifted up around the tires. He'd kept the battery on a trickle charger, half out of habit. "Tell me that thing still runs," Regina groaned as he heaved her into the passenger seat. "Hasn't failed me yet," he said. Titan leapt in after her, planting himself practically on her lap. Christopher slammed the door, ran around the hood, and slid in behind the wheel. His hands shook on the keys, not from fear but from cold and adrenaline. The engine coughed once, twice, then roared to life like it was as stubborn as he was. Headlights swung wild as he threw it into reverse and backed out of the lean-to. A bullet punched the passenger side mirror into bits. Another cracked the windshield. He jammed the truck into drive and stomped the gas. They shot forward, tires spinning, then catching. Snow sprayed up behind them. In the rearview mirror, Christopher saw Harrigan burst from the back of the cabin, gun up, screaming. Two figures, Cole and another deputy who must have arrived, scrambled behind him, one of them firing wild. A hit took out the back window. Glass blew inward. Titan twisted, putting himself between the shards and Regina. Tiny cuts opened in his fur. He didn't make a sound. "Good boy," she whispered, hand clutching his collar with white knuckles. The cabin gate loomed ahead, two thick wooden posts, and a crossbar he'd built himself. Under normal days, he'd stop and open it. Tonight was not normal. "Hang on," Christopher said. He didn't slow. The truck hit the gate with a crack like a tree splitting. The crossbar shattered, boards flying. The impact threw them all forward against their belts, then back again. For a second, he thought he'd broken the axle. But the truck kept going, bounding over broken boards and into the main road. In the side mirror, he saw Harrigan stumble to a stop at the edge of the wrecked gate, watching them go. Then the chief turned, screaming into his radio. If you found a cop bleeding on your land and the people chasing her wore the same uniform, Christopher thought, fingers tight on the wheel, would you still call for help? Or would you do what I'm doing now? If you were in his boots right here, old, tired, with a whole town's worth of trouble in your rearview, what would you choose? Duck your head and hope it passes, or slam your foot on the gas and take the hit? Honestly, I'd love to know what you think. If you're reading this, drop a comment or a thought somewhere, because the line between mind your business and this is my fight now is thinner than we like to admit. Up ahead, the road curved along the edge of a drop, guardrail half buried in snow. Beyond it, nothing but dark and the river far below, a faint roar under all the other noise. Blue and red lights flashed in the distance. More cruisers blocking the way out of town. Regina sagged against the seat, eyes closed. Her breath came shallow. "You still with me?" Christopher asked. "Depends," she whispered. "We dead yet?" "Not if I can help it." She opened one eye and gave him a look, faint but sharp. "That's what scares me." He would have smiled if his mouth would move. Behind them, the glow of pursuing headlights grew brighter. The radio on Regina's belt crackled weakly with overlapping voices. "Officer down. Shots fired. Knox has taken Chief Harrigan's gun." Possible kidnapping of Officer Shaw. The story was already being written, line by line, and none of it matched what he'd just lived. Up ahead, the bridge came into view. It was the only way across the river. Narrow, two-lane, metal rails rimed with ice. Tonight it looked like the barrel of a gun pointed straight at them. Parked across the near end sideways was a dark armored vehicle with Pine Ridge Police stenciled on the side. 2 cruisers sat behind it, lights strobing. "No way around?" Christopher asked, though he knew the answer. Regina blinked slowly. "You can try the river," she said, "but I don't recommend it." He eased off the gas as they neared the line of cars. There were no sirens, just the pulsing flash of lights and the cold sweep of search beams scanning the road. "All right," he said. "Guess we go say hello." "Christopher," she started. "Relax," he said, taking his foot off the gas completely. "I'll be polite." The truck rolled to a stop 50 feet from the barricade. For a moment, nobody moved. The snow fell between them like static on a TV screen. Then the side door of the armored vehicle opened. Harrigan stepped out, bandage dark on his arm, face tight with pain and fury. He held a megaphone in one hand now, though he didn't even need it. His voice carried. "Christopher Knox," he shouted. "Step out of the vehicle with your hands raised." Slowly, Christopher put the truck in park. "You planning something stupid?" Regina asked. Her voice was a whisper, but he heard the worry buried under the rough tone. "Depends on your definition," he said. "Keep the dog close." He opened his door and slid down into the snow, raising his empty hands high. The cold slapped him again. The bridge hummed faintly under his boots. It always did that, some quirk of the metal and the river and the wind. Tonight it felt like a warning. He walked forward until he was halfway between the truck and the blockade. Guns tracked him from every angle. He could see shapes behind the cruisers. Deputies he didn't know by name. Rifles resting on hoods, barrels following his chest. Harrigan walked to meet him, steps slow, confident. The megaphone dangled at his side now. "You made quite a mess tonight, Mr. Knox," he said when they were close enough to speak normally. His breath steamed in the air between them. "You want to tell me why you attacked officers and kidnapped one of my people?" Christopher let out a short, humorless sound. "She tell you that's what happened?" he asked. "She can't tell me anything," Harrigan said. "Because you took her. You shot at my men. You booby-trapped your cabin. You turned my town into a war zone." "You shot her," Christopher said, quiet. "Careful what you say," Harrigan said. "A lot of witnesses here." "Good," Christopher said. "Maybe they should hear it too." Harrigan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "This is how this goes," he said. "You walk back to your truck. You help us move Regina into our care. You surrender your weapons. We write this up as an unfortunate misunderstanding with an unstable veteran. Judge might take pity on you. Maybe you get a hospital bed instead of a cell." "And if I don't?" Christopher asked. Harrigan's eyes went flat. "Then you die on this bridge," he said. "And the report says you took Regina with you." For a moment, they just looked at each other. Old soldier, dirty cop, snow blowing sideways between them. "You know what I don't get," Christopher said. "You had a job where people trusted you. Kids waved when you drove by. Folks called you when they were scared. And you sold that out for what? Money. You think the world cares about some snitches and their fake names? Harrigan said, You think anyone's going to miss them? Those people were already dead. I just collected the tip. You sold out families, Christopher said. Mothers, kids. You knew what those men would do to them. Harrigan shrugged. Cartel's going to cartel. At least this way, my people get something out of it. You talk like you're taking care of your town, Christopher said. All you did was paint a target on it. Harrigan's jaw clenched. Feds don't know a damn thing, he said. By the time they piece together their little ledger, this will all be cleaned up. No loose ends. No witnesses. He lifted his gun slowly, deliberately, till it pointed at Christopher's chest. Last chance, he said. Walk away from this, old man, or I make you a statistic. Christopher met his gaze, calm in a way that surprised even him. I think you're wrong about the feds, he said. Harrigan smirked. You think they're coming to save you? They're hours away, if they're even coming at all. This valley is mine. As if the sky had been waiting for that cue, a low, distant thump rolled through the air. Christopher heard it first, because he knew the sound. He'd heard it coming in over jungle canopy, over rice fields, over river deltas. A deep chop-chop-chop that set his teeth on edge. The rotors grew louder, fast. Harrigan frowned and glanced up. Over the ridge to the east, a dark shape rose, big, fast. No police markings. A second followed behind it. Their running lights blinked red and white. Their searchlights were still off, but the sound left no doubt. Helicopters. Harrigan's smirk faltered. He turned back to Christopher, eyes narrowing. What did you do? He asked. Christopher didn't answer. He didn't have to. The sky answered for him. The first spotlight hit, like a second sun. It snapped on from the belly of the lead helicopter and slammed down onto the bridge, washing everything in harsh white. Harrigan threw up an arm with a curse. Deputies flinched, blinking, guns wavering. Christopher squinted, but kept his stance. He'd stared into worse lights before. A voice boomed from above through a loudspeaker, clear and sharp over the rotors and wind. This is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, it said. All local officers, lower your weapons immediately and step back from the civilians. Harrigan looked like someone had yanked the ground out from under him. This is my scene, he shouted up at the sky. You're trespassing on a local matter. The voice didn't care. Chief Patrick Harrigan, it said, naming him clean. You are the subject of an active federal investigation. You are ordered to drop your weapon and lie face down on the ground. A few deputies shot each other quick, stunned looks. From the second helicopter, ropes dropped. Figures slid down them. Dark shapes in heavy gear. Rifles slung, movements precise. They hit the bridge deck in smooth landings and fanned out, lasers flicking on. One red dot settled right over Harrigan's chest. Another on his forehead. A third danced across his gun hand. Christopher felt tighten before he saw him. The dog slipped past him, out of the truck, fur raised. Regina leaned half out of the open passenger door, one hand braced on the frame, the other wrapped in Titan's collar. She looked terrible, skin gray, clothes stiff with blood, paint etched into every line of her face. But she was upright, staring right at Harrigan. Harrigan, she rasped. You always did like an audience. He jerked at the sound of her voice. For the first time that night, actual fear flashed across his face. You should be dead, he spat. Yeah, she said. You keep saying that. An FBI agent stepped forward, megaphone in hand. He wore no obvious rank on his gear, but everyone reacted to him. He had that still, steady presence of someone used to walking into chaos and expecting to walk out again. Chief Harrigan, he called. We have your financial records. We have the decrypted ledger from your private drive. We have wire transfers from cartel shell accounts going straight into entities you control. And we have your confession for the last 5 minutes recorded in real time." Harrigan blinked. "Confession," he said. "What confession?" "You just admitted to selling witness protection identities to cartel contacts," the agent said. "You bragged about it, actually. We've been listening this whole time." He lifted a small device. It looked like a phone or maybe a recorder, but Christopher could see the small blue light on it. "Live connection. You think I'd take a ride with you without a backup?" Regina called out, voice shaking but loud enough to carry. "You were wired from the moment I walked into your office, Chief. Everything you've said today went straight to the cloud. And to them." She jerked her chin at the helicopters. Harrigan's mouth opened, closed. Rage twisted his features. "You ungrateful little—" "Careful," one of the FBI agents said dryly. "Every word is still live." The red dots on Harrigan's chest brightened as the snipers adjusted. Around them, the deputies were shifting. Some lowered their weapons to the snow with slow, careful movements. Morales unbuckled her holster and let her gun drop, then raised her hands. Cole looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff who'd just realized the ground wasn't rock at all but ice. "Chief," he said weakly, "is this a joke?" "Shut up, Cole," Harrigan snapped. "Afraid it's not a joke," the lead FBI agent said. "We've been following your little business for a while. Officer Shaw's evidence just let us move faster." He pointed at Regina with the megaphone. "That dead man's switch you sent, officer? It hit our system about 3 hours ago. Took us about 5 minutes to realize what we were looking at, and about 10 more to decide we couldn't trust anyone in your department with it. So we came ourselves." Regina sagged a little against the door, but smiled faintly. "Happy to help," she said. "Last warning," the agent told Harrigan. "Gun on the ground, hands where we can see them, or this ends very badly for you." Harrigan's gaze darted around the bridge. Helicopters above, FBI in front, deputies behind him who suddenly weren't pointing guns at Christopher or Regina anymore but at the ground, palms open. For the first time, he looked alone. "You're making a mistake," he said, but the swagger was gone. "You don't understand what you're doing." "We understand enough," the agent said. "Throw the gun down." Harrigan bared his teeth. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He grabbed Christopher. He moved fast, faster than a man with a shredded arm should. 1 second he was standing with his gun pointed vaguely downward. The next he lunged forward, grabbed a handful of Christopher's coat, and yanked him close, swinging the gun up under Christopher's jaw. "Back off," he screamed at the agents. "Back the hell off, or the old man dies." For a moment, the whole bridge froze. Christopher smelled sweat on him, sharp under the scent of blood and gun oil. Felt the hard line of the pistol against his neck. Felt Harrigan's arm shaking. "Really?" Christopher muttered. "Human shield? That's your big move." "Shut up," Harrigan snarled. His eyes were wide now, no calm left. "You think I'm going quietly? You think I'm going to spend the rest of my life in a cage because some little K-9 cop got curious?" The FBI snipers shifted, but the angle wasn't clean. They might hit Christopher instead. "Let him go," the lead agent called. "It's over. You're just stacking charges now." "Oh, we passed over a while back," Harrigan said. "We're in bonus round." "Chief," Morales called from behind, voice steadier now than his. "Don't do this. There's nowhere to go." "I'll make somewhere," Harrigan snapped. His gun twitched away from Christopher for a fraction of a second, drawn by the voice. It was a small movement. Small, but enough. Titan moved. The dog tore free of Regina's grip with a sound that was more like a roar than a bark. He bolted across the bridge, claws slipping once on the icy metal, then finding purchase. Harrigan turned at the sound, bringing the gun around. Titan launched. He hit Harrigan square in the side, jaws clamping down on the chief's gun arm. The impact knocked Harrigan sideways, his grip on Christopher's coat tearing loose. They staggered together. The gun fired once, a wild shot into the air. Then a sniper's voice crackled in someone's earpiece, clear and calm. Clear. 3 shots rang out almost as one, sharp and controlled. Harrigan's leg buckled. His wrist shattered under Titan's weight and the bullet's force. He screamed, high and raw, and went down hard, the gun spinning out of his grasp and skittering across the bridge. Dog off! Dog off! An agent shouted. Titan, leave. Regina yelled, voice cracking. Titan released Harrigan's arm instantly and backed off, teeth bared, eyes locked on the man who'd hurt his handler. FBI agents swarmed in, boots pounding on metal. In seconds, Harrigan was on his stomach, his good arm wrenched behind him, the ruined one pinned carefully by a gloved hand. Someone read him his rights in a flat, practiced voice, while another agent kicked the gun further away. You have the right to remain silent, Harrigan coughed, spitting blood onto the snow-dusted steel. You think this stops anything? He rasped. There are others. I'm not the only one. We know, the agent said. We'll see them soon. Christopher rubbed his neck, where the gun had been, feeling the ghost of the barrel. Titan trotted back to him, tail low but wagging, panting hard. Good work, Christopher told the dog, scratching behind his ear. Titan leaned into the touch, like he was soaking up praise. Regina slid out of the truck, one hand on the door frame, the other pressed to her chest. Her legs trembled under her. You should sit, Christopher said, moving toward her. You should mind your own body for once. She shot back, but she let him steady her. FBI medics were already moving up the bridge with bags and stretchers. One peeled off to check Christopher, shining a light in his eyes. Another went straight to Regina, their gaze snapping to the blood on her clothes. She's priority, Christopher said, pushing the medic toward her. I'm just old. They got Regina onto a stretcher, Titan pacing alongside, refusing to be left behind. The medics worked fast, checking her vitals, adjusting her bandages, starting in 4 right there on the bridge. Stabilizable, one of them said. But it's good we're here now. Any longer? Yeah, well, Regina muttered. Timing's kind of our theme tonight. The lead FBI agent approached Christopher once things settled into motion. He took off his helmet and goggles, revealing tired eyes and short dark hair. Mr. Knox, he said, holding out a hand. I'm Special Agent Russo. I believe we owe you an apology. Christopher looked at the hand, then took it. His grip was firm. For what? He asked. For not getting here sooner, Russo said. For leaving you to deal with that psychopath on your own for as long as you did. Christopher snorted. You showed up, he said. That's more than I expected from anyone tonight. Russo nodded toward Regina. She put a lot on the line to get that file out, he said. She trusted us to do the right thing with it. We weren't going to leave her twisting out here. You got all of it? Christopher asked. The ledger. The payments. Russo's face hardened. Every last line, he said. And not just from here. Harrigan wasn't operating in a vacuum. There are other departments, other names, some of them in places that are not going to enjoy the headlines tomorrow. He looked back at Harrigan, who was being loaded onto a stretcher of his own now, wrists cuffed to the rails. But your chief was one of the biggest links, he said. Taking him down has been on our board for a while. We just didn't have someone brave or stubborn enough to hand us the keys. He nodded toward Regina. Until her. Christopher followed his gaze. She lay on the stretcher with her eyes half closed, Titan's head resting gently on her thigh. Even through the haze of pain and drugs beginning to drip into her veins, she still scanned the scene like a cop, making sure nobody was in danger. Take care of her, Christopher said. We will, Russo said. "And we'll need statements from you, obviously. But not tonight. Tonight you go home, get warm, get your heartbeat under 100 again." Christopher almost laughed at that. "I'll believe that when it happens," he said. They loaded Regina into an ambulance. Titan refused to let the doors close until someone gave him a spot. Russo hesitated, then looked at Christopher. "He rides," Christopher said. "You try to leave him, he'll follow on foot, and you'll lose." "Fine," Russo said. "Dog rides." Titan jumped in and settled by Regina's side, eyes on the open doors until they shut. Just before they did, Regina lifted a hand, fingers trembling, and pointed at Christopher. "Hey, old man," she called weakly. "You did all right." He tipped 2 fingers at her in a vague salute. "You too, Shaw." The doors shut. The ambulance lights flared and it pulled away, tires hissing on the snow. The helicopters lifted higher, one peeling off to escort the ambulance, the other circling wider. Agents began to gather evidence, photograph everything, mark shell casings. The bridge, which had been a slaughter line a few minutes ago, turned into a crime scene with paperwork. Christopher stood there in the wash of lights and noise for a long moment, feeling every year he'd lived. His hands shook now that the adrenaline was draining off. The cold got back in. Russo noticed. "We'll have a car take you home," he said. "We'll post some agents up your way for a while, just in case any of Harrigan's friends are dumber than he is." "I'll be fine," Christopher said automatically. Russo gave him a look that said he'd heard that from 1,000 tough guys before and believed exactly none of them. "Let us be paranoid for once," he said. "You've earned a break." So Christopher accepted the ride. He watched the flashing lights fade in the rear window as the car took him back up the mountain road. He saw his broken gate in the headlights, the shattered boards scattered like bones. The cabin looked small and battered, one window boarded up already by some helpful agent, bullet holes patched with plastic until they could send someone out. When he stepped out of the car, the driver, a young agent with tired eyes, offered a hand. Christopher waved him off and went up the steps under his own power. He stood on his porch for a minute, listening to the engine fade, feeling the night settle back around him. The forest felt different now, not safer, but honest again. Its dangers were normal ones. Inside, the cabin smelled of gunpowder and antiseptic and smoke. Blood stained the rug. The couch cushions were torn. His coffee mug from earlier lay shattered by the wall, broken in 3 clean pieces. He picked them up one by one, considered throwing them out, then set them gently in the sink instead. Maybe some things could be glued. He sat down at the table, hands wrapped around air where a mug should have been, and let out a long breath. The war, he thought, had found him again. But this time, he hadn't run from it. He wasn't sure what that meant yet. He only knew he was very, very tired. There's no clean way to slide from a night like that into the days that follow. There are hospital rooms and interviews and forms. There are angry phone calls, news reports, people on TV arguing about things they weren't there to see. Some of that touched Christopher, but not much. He kept his world small. Cabin, trees, occasional visit from an agent to ask for one more detail he'd already given. They brought him updates when they came. Harrigan had been moved to a federal facility, they said. There were charges stacked up tall enough to block out the sun. Other departments in other states were under investigation now. A few names had already led to arrests. Some witnesses who thought they were forgotten got new protection, better this time, with people who actually gave a damn watching over them. Regina made it through surgery. She made it through the infections that tried to sneak in after. The bullet had done damage, but it hadn't taken anything the doctors couldn't patch well enough to give her a life. "Stubborn," Russo said once when he stopped by. "She keeps giving the nurses grief. I think they're more scared of her than they were of Harrigan." Christopher nodded at that and didn't say much. It sounded right. Time moved the way it always did in the mountains. Snow melted. The river swelled with runoff, louder now than the helicopters had been. Birds came back. The trees put out new needles. Christopher went back to splitting wood, fixing bullet holes, replacing the broken things he could, and accepting the ones he couldn't. One afternoon, when the sun was out and the air held the first hint of real warmth, he sat on his porch with a new cheap mug and a pocket knife, carving a small block of wood into something roughly dog-shaped. Titan, he decided, deserved at least that. He was working on the ears when he heard tires on his drive, not the rumble of a patrol car this time. Something else. Smooth, low. A black SUV rolled into view between the trees. For a moment his muscles tensed, remembering flashbacks of that night, but then he saw who stepped out of the passenger side. Regina. She moved slower than he remembered, but she moved. Plain clothes instead of uniform, a cane under one hand, a thin line of scar peeking above the collar of her shirt. Her hair was longer now, falling over one shoulder. The driver stayed in the car. This was her visit. The back door opened, and Titan jumped out, tail already wagging, nose in the air. Christopher stood up, without thinking. The knife slipped into his pocket. "You get lost on your way to a real town?" he asked as she climbed the steps. She smiled, small but real. "Missed the scenery," she said. "Figured I'd check if the old man who tried to die on a bridge was still alive." "Doctors are getting better these days," he said. "They kept you around too." She reached the top step and held out a cardboard box. "Here," she said. "Peace offering." He took it, brows lifting. Inside was a ceramic mug, simple, solid, dark blue. On the side, in small engraved letters, it said, "Thank you for answering the wrong knock the right way." He stared at it a second longer than he meant to. "You didn't have to," he started. "I know," she said. "I wanted to." Titan shoved his head under Christopher's hand, demanding attention. Christopher obliged, scratching the dog's neck. "How's the job?" he asked. "You going back?" She shrugged, leaning on the cane. "They offered," she said. "Different department. Federal task force. Lot of suits. Lot of meetings." I said maybe. "Not a fan of suits?" he asked. "I like dogs better," she said. "They lie less." He huffed a laugh. "Can't argue with that." They stood there for a moment, side by side, looking out at the trees. Titan settled between them, content. "You know," Regina said quietly, "you didn't have to get involved that night. You could have called it in anyway. Walked away. Told yourself it wasn't your problem." "Could have," he said. "Why didn't you?" He thought about it. About jungles and river crossings and orders that made no sense. About men who didn't come back because someone looked the other way when they shouldn't have. He didn't give her a speech. That wasn't his style. "Seemed like my porch," he said finally. "Guy brings his mess to my porch. It's my mess now." She nodded. "Fair enough." For a few minutes, they just listened to the river and the distant whine through the pines. "You know," she said eventually, "Titan kind of thinks this place is his second home now. If you ever want some company that doesn't talk much, we could swing by sometimes. Bring coffee. Maybe something that isn't in a can. Long as you knock first," he said. "No more surprise entries with gunshots afterward." She smiled. "Deal." They talked a little more. Not about Harrigan or the cases or the families whose lives had hung on a file in the cloud. Those things were still there, heavy and complicated, but they didn't need to be the only thing between them. Before she left, Regina paused at the top of the steps and looked back. "Hey, Christopher," she said. "You ever think your life was over and then find out it was just changing direction?" He thought of the night in the snow, the badge on the ground, the dog's desperate bark, the bridge, the helicopters, the mug in his hand now, solid and warm. "Yeah," he said, "starting to." She nodded like that was the answer she'd hoped for. Then she climbed into the SUV, Titan leaping in after her. The door shut. The engine started. The car rolled back, down the drive, disappearing between the trees. Christopher stood there on his porch, new mug in one hand, half-carved wooden dog in the other. For the first time in a long time, the cabin didn't feel like a bunker built to keep the world out. It felt like a place someone might come back to, a place worth cleaning up, worth keeping warm. An old veteran had found a dying female officer and her K-9 partner in the snow one night. That was the moment everything cracked open. It was also, he realized now, the moment something new began. He sat down, set the mug beside him, picked up his knife, and went back to carving. This time, when he looked up at the tree line, he didn't just see threats. He saw a road where one day soon, a black SUV might appear again, with a cop who'd survived and a dog who'd saved them both. And for once, he found himself hoping it would. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this story. If you enjoyed this story, I promise you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more thrilling as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.